And one thing that I open up every single guest on this show and this conversation with is a very important question in my book. And that is, when it comes to games, and you've been around the industry a bit now, but when it comes to games, what is your origin story with games? And this can go back to origin stories begin at all different stages, I've learned as I've done these. But where's the origin for you? Where does that kind of first game or that first game experience come in that got you excited about board games?
Shoot. Well, I grew up playing games, card games with my grandma and my parents. I've been playing cribbage with my dad since I don't know how old. But my very first modern board game was in my first year of college. So I was 18 years old. And for some reason, it was Small World Underground, not Small World Original, but the really gloomy version. And just got hooked. I loved making my races and all of that. And then shortly thereafter, I started working in the game store, and that really helped my collection grow very quickly.
It's really interesting you mentioned Small World. I say it because I actually introduced my cousin with the base game of Small World. And I always found it really interesting that game got her hooked. And I think she owns like 15, 20 games now. So Small World is done, though I actually haven't played Underground. So I cannot speak actually to Underground at all. I have not played it. But I have to say, one thing that really stood out as I was kind of getting ready to chat with you is really you have a fantastic career thus far in the board game industry. You've been at some great places. I'm wondering how your actual journey, because you mentioned working in a shop and things like that, but where does your journey in the industry actually begin? Because now I think you're coming on, I don't know if it's a decade yet, but you're getting pretty close to a decade in the actual board game industry on that marketing end.
So my professional journey, we can say it started at the store, right? But while I was working at the store, I was actually studying to get my French degree so I could be a high school French teacher. Clearly I don't do that. So at some point my path took a turn. I went abroad, finished my degree, came back, needed a new job, a second job to pay rent. So I looked on my university Craigslist equivalent, and there was a listing for board game customer service. Now, I thought this was just another game store job, but it was actually for a publisher that was local to my university, and that was for Yellow. So they do King of Tokyo, Welcome to the Dungeon, a bunch of good games. So I started doing customer service part-time, and needed more hours, so I kept asking for more things. Who can I help? What can I do? Give me tasks. So just worked my way up and accumulated experiences over 4 years. I was with Yellow for 4 years. And then I went to Renegade, was with them for a year. Then Gamma, the nonprofit for the board game industry, who also puts on Origins Game Fair. And now, currently, I'm at Pandasaurus, and I've been at Panda for almost a year. So
that's right. I actually remember because even though I haven't had a channel for more than 3-4 months, I remember reading the announcement, and in particular, it stood out because the announcement or the press release, they wrote it. It's a very personal press release. I like the way that they kind of announced anything. And they talked about your experience. That's actually, kind of that background and where you've been and how excited they were for you to join, which led me to actually then realize, oh, wait a minute. She's the one on the Discord who I'm hearing from all the time. So I connected the dots fairly quickly there. And it fascinated me because Discords in particular, I think in the past year, more so than ever, we've seen them highly active, but you have done tremendous work in there in building a community. Can you talk a little bit about what this past year has been like, in particular, building that community in a different way, really, than maybe we've really looked at it before? Again, Discord being a big piece of that.
Yeah, so Discord is new to me too. I hadn't opened it until the pandemic started, and I started playing D&D online with friends, and so Discord was our platform of choice. Um, but with all of the online conventions too, a lot of them have been doing their their hosting for the show in Discord. So a lot of people, myself included, have had to become very familiar with it very fast. Um, and it's primarily used in the video game community, right? I also play video games, and so once I realized what Discord was, I started recognizing it in places like, oh, this video game developer has their own Discord, I'll join. So a lot of what you see in the Pandasaurus Discord is me taking the bits and pieces of what I've gleaned from other publishers and other video game companies, seeing what works and what I want ours to look like. So it's just a little hybrid thing that I think is pretty fun. I have it open all day long talking to people.
It really is powerful though, because I think it's changed the way a lot of communications are happening. I just feel like I'm gonna. It's not just that. I think I'm in the Man vs. Meeple Discord. There's a bunch of different Discords I find myself in, to the point where I was like, well, I don't need to open my own at this point because there's just so many. But for the publishers, I just think it's terrific. Speaking of kind of joining Pandasaurus, what when you've obviously, as you noted with your career, been at some really great places and places that people are very well aware of. Having Shem Phillips on the show previously, a large fan of many of his games, have gone through Renegade as an example. So when you talk about joining Pandasaurus, what was going through your mind with that opportunity, and what was the thing that was really appealing about joining Pandasaurus? Because I'll just say from my perspective, and I just remember meeting some of the folks from there at PAX Unplugged, that was a place that I was excited about what was coming. I didn't even know what was coming. I think I played silver and gold at that point. And I said, I like what they're doing. So for me, I definitely saw a great potential there, but I wasn't looking for a job. It's a very different thing when you're looking at a job.
So I wasn't looking for a job either. I wasn't really. Over this past summer, I stepped away from my last position, and I was just taking a break. I didn't have anything lined up. I was just enjoying some time off. But I've known everyone at Pandasaurus for a few years now, working at Gamma with them at Origins, and just, being on the convention route with everyone. You see the same people every few weeks at the next big show. So when Molly Nathan had posted the job position, I thought about it. I wasn't quite sure if I was ready to leave my summer break, but I decided to throw my hat in the ring. What's the worst that could happen? I continue my break, or I get a job. It's fine. So part of the listing was the application listing was to submit a cover letter talking about why you want to join Pandasaurus. And the thing that caught Molly Nathan's attention was, is very standard. I talked about all of the great things they're doing, the great games, everything I knew about them, but I put a little asterisk at some point. And at the very bottom of my cover letter, I revisited that asterisk. So I was like, I need you to know that whenever I talk about Pandasaurus to other people, I refer to you all as the Panda fam, because you're so tight-knit and nice to each other and supportive. I just love that. It's a family vibe you give off. And so they referenced that in my interview. Apparently, was the golden ticket. And in the interview, we talked for like over 2 hours. It was just natural, and we're bouncing ideas off of each other. So definitely was incorporated into that Panda family immediately.
And it sounds like you obviously, I know you'll be coming up on that year, but I can definitely feel that vibe. I'd say I feel in the community itself. It is a great community. Do you have I know it's hard to pick a favorite, but but is there a game outside of the new, we're going to get to what's coming out, I know, but is there one Pandasaurus game that you play probably more than ever? And I won't say favorite, but in this maybe past 6 months that you've probably played more than any other game. I don't think it's fair to ask you your favorite, because that's like picking your favorite child.
All of my, right. I have to look where they are. So Umbravia, I've played the most, but that's because we've had a lot of shows. It's new. It's so elegant. I adore this game. But I do have a favorite, a game that holds a special place in my heart, and that's Sonora, because I play tested this game before I was even part of the Panda team, or excuse me, the Panda fam, and it used to be about insects. Like me and Sonora go way back. It's a flick and right. So crokinole meets roll and right. It's just wonderful. Never played anything like it.
Were you a crokinole fan too?
I no, I didn't know what crokinole was until I moved to the Midwest 2 years ago. But I'm not very good at it.
One of the regulars on this channel in particular keeps trying to get me to play crokinole, and he's got a nice board and stuff, but we haven't been able to play it because of the pandemic. So I will be getting my own first experience with that probably this summer. So I understand that. Let's talk about it though. I mean, you mentioned the new game. I believe it's coming out. It's not this week, but I guess next week it'll be.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Yeah. So talk about this a little bit. Where does this game come into play in terms of mechanics, thematics? You know, what gets you excited about this game? Because I could hear you starting to get into it. So I'd love to hear kind of that full story behind this one.
So yeah, let's start with the theme, because as soon as I read the brief for this one, the back of the box overview, I was into it. So in Umbravia, you stumbled into this clandestine garden. And there's winding stone paths everywhere with flowers blooming between the cracks. And those flowers are fragments of your soul. So you are playing this game, which combines secret bidding, tile placement, and area control in a race to become the first to reunite all the missing pieces of your soul, aka soul flowers. And so 3 of those mechanics I named, secret bidding and area control, not my forte, not my jam. I do not excel or really enjoy games with that mixture. But Umbravia does it in such a way that they're all 3 of those mechanics are balanced and interact with each other, that there are layers of decisions that you have to make. So rules-wise, it's very simple. There are 2 rounds of secret bidding. So you see the 4 tiles that you're bidding on. You have a screen behind which you have your personal bidding board that has 1, 2, 3, 4. So you know which tiles you're bidding on. So everyone draws 3 flowers from their bag, and your bag has a mixture of soul flowers and energy flowers. And the difference between those is energy are worth 1 and soul flowers are worth 2. So you bid, you reveal, you place your flowers onto the altar board where everyone can see, and then you do it again. So what I don't like about bidding is that you have to, it's kind of bluffing, right? You have to go all in or hedge your bets, whatever. But in this case, you know exactly how many flowers people are drawing, and then you get a little nugget of information too, so you can change your strategy if they're going all in on one tile or not. So that's really interesting. After the second round of bidding, you actually resolve the tiles and the bids. So starting from the tile which received the fewest bids, you place it. So this is the second part that's super interesting, because you could go all in on a tile, but if it has a lot of interest and a lot of flowers on it, it's going to be placed last. So the board state could change dramatically between then, like between when you bid on it and when you actually get to place it. So it's great. You just go, you make paths. If the paths are completed, you do a summoning. It's all very dramatic. And that's how you actually get more of your soul flower and reunite your soul.
And is it victory when you've completed your soul, essentially? Is that's the general idea? You basically got to get them all and complete your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No,
so you have to gain 11 flowers. You have to be the first. So it's kind of a race too, which I also don't typically like, but it's all open information for that part.
I like when you describe the bidding though, because one of the things I agree with you, sometimes bidding can be, it's like a one and done thing. I talk about, I mean, I play a party game, go nuts. I guess you'd call it a party game. Go nuts for donuts with my family all the time, and it turns into my wife and I picking the same thing like 5 times in a row. And my son just taking everything. But I love that idea that you have another shot beyond that first turn.
Right.
And this one has gotten, I know, some great hype and some great conversation. It looks really beautiful too.
Mm.
I want to just call out, it looks like artists on this one is Eddie Shillo and Stevo Torres, according to Board Game Geek. So some really beautiful art. So it looks like it has a very good table presence, which anyone who's watched the channel would know. I like good table presence with good gameplay. That's something that's now pretty important to me. Yeah, it sounds like you are excited. Is there, as you prepare for a game, can you kind of walk me though through what you kind of goes on for your marketing mind on what you
Ooh.
want to do? Because you in your work are working with reviewers, your work, you're talking to the community, you're getting gameplay out there and letting people kind of try it out on some of the digital platforms. So what's going through your mind as some of the most important things that you've got to do before a game gets out there?
I want people to talk about it because if so, I think me being excited gets you excited and the viewers excited. Hopefully, I did a good job. But hopefully, like that excitement is infectious, right? So it's just this chain reaction. So the more people that talk about your game and are genuinely excited about it before release, the more it bodes well for when it's actually out there in the wild. So with reviewers, I value them probably the most out of any marketing efforts, like more than paid ads, more than anything else. I value the people that we work with who can actually spread the word. Um, so we do different waves of review copies. We actually airship a case or two of a title from straight from our factory. Like as soon as it's printed, we're like, okay, put it in a box, send it to FedEx. Uh, and I send those out to the 6 or a dozen people who I think will enjoy it the most and reach the most people. But then when we have our actual main shipment reach our warehouse, I send out another wave, and then a few weeks later another wave. So like there's this steady stream of conversation happening about our games. Even so, most of the time this is all before release. Even we do a wave at release and maybe one after. But yeah, getting that conversation happening is super valuable.
Yeah, I always find it really interesting because I've seen that multiple wave approach, and a lot of times I hear people talking about the pre-wave, but really the conversation continues.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a lot of games but that's the other piece is you've also got other games, that are coming out. I could just say I've got Dinosaur Island. I've got all the expense sitting kind of to the left of me. You can't see them. They're underneath a
They
round
look
table.
like this, yeah.
Yeah, they're right there. But I just remember just kind of the excitement around that with the meeples. And then you continue to evolve that world. So it's an evolving world and you've got to think in the present and in the future. So I imagine a little bit of a juggling task with the amount of games that it seems like Pandasaurus creates now, because it does seem like there is a very good flow going on there. So how important is communications across Pandasaurus as you're trying to do your marketing strategy and coordinate with all these designers and artists? I have to imagine it's key.
Thankfully, that part is not my job. We have a project manager who does all of that. He's kind of like the circus person with the plates twirling on sticks. That's Mike.
That is a perfect description of a project manager, by the way. I work with one myself, and I've never thought about that in that way, but that is literally the perfect description. I'm now gonna have a visual of her, and her name is Natalie, in my work, but I'm now gonna have a visual of her doing that. So I got to thank you for that one.
You're
That's
welcome.
great.
That's the best. That's the only good thing I'm going to say this stream. But no, it's communication is key. Like in everyone's job across the industry, communication is key. No matter who you're working with, if you're working with someone other than yourself, and honestly, no, that's not even true. You have to communicate well with yourself and like your own capabilities and workload and be realistic with that and remind yourself of deadlines. Like keep a good calendar and a to-do list. But actually today and yesterday I was working with reviewers about our June release. So I'm like 2 to 4 months in the future already is where my head's at. But I was giving them a heads up like, oh, we're going to have a wave of review copies. I'm expecting them in 3 weeks. Do you have bandwidth to do a review and publish it within this time frame? Cool. So just setting expectations and getting things on people's radar, that's been super helpful across the board.
I think one thing you just said is extremely important, because I think a lot of people will go, they'll think, oh, I can make a channel, I can get, and I'm not saying this is everyone, but there's some people think, oh, I can just think, but there's work related to it, and there is timelines. I mean, if as you as a publisher need something to be covered in a time to serve your own marketing needs, obviously. So I think that's a really important part of the industry that not everyone always talks about, but it's there and exists. One thing about this industry that I know is important to you that I want to make sure we hit before I end this, because I do think it's critical to speak about, and it's been probably more on the radar for people than ever. And that is really the representation of the people within this industry. And I'm wondering, because I know, I mean, it even in your Twitter profile, it says, I love that it says this. I want representation and I want it now. And I think it's one it's beautiful and perfect. But what do you think needs to be done? Where are we seeing some wins in this area? But what do we think needs to continue to be done? And how can people support this mission of getting greater representation across the industry?
So this is one of the reasons I was drawn to Pandasaurus. They put a lot of trust in me to make sure our goal of representation is achieved. We do that with the designers we work with the artists we work with. But I think it's also important that the reviewers that you work with are also from a diverse background, because they're speaking to their audience, which you figure has a lot in common with them. So unfortunately, I don't know if that's the right word, but a lot of the biggest media channels in the industry are of a specific and similar demographic. Yeah. So I try to make sure in each wave of review copies that I have some that go to smaller channels, and I make sure that there's a wide swath of people, of types of people from different backgrounds talking about our games, so that all types of people know that our games are for you. That's very important. So yeah, it's the forefront of my mind when I'm doing all of this media outreach.
Yeah, no, and it's extremely topical these days, but it's something that shouldn't have to be topical in the moment. It should be topical all the time. It's something we should be doing. So I want to make sure we brought it up and spoke a little bit to it, because if we don't, and we let it sit in the dark, and not get talked about and kind of fade away, there's a problem, and we need to address it. We do obviously an important topic. I want to thank Omari for chiming on this, and I agree. And I thank Omari for joining in on the stream today as well. Danny, one thing that I say to everyone on this show, it's an important question, and I think in particular, you speak to a different audience than most of the people I've had on so far, because a lot of them have been the board game designers, the board game artists. But for those who are potentially interested in this profession, because there's plenty of people who I know that I've spoken with in my life, who, if they were sitting in your shoes right now, would say, man, I wish I could be there, because I wish I could be working for a publisher of board games. Like, that's got to be so much fun. And it's work. First and foremost, let's be clear. It's work. It's a job. But for some people, it is potentially a dream job. So what's the advice you give to those people on how to potentially begin their career path, or prepare that career path in that way, and build those networks to make that a reasonable thing that could occur for them?
That's a tough question, because I pretty much lucked into my first position, right? I was in college and I didn't even, I told my first boss at Yellow, I would only be there for 6 months because I was starting grad school and I was going to leave. But I loved it so much I stuck around, right? So this is a dream job for me too. I can't imagine doing anything else now. But the reason I was able to get here today is, you touched on it a little bit, the networks, the people I I met along the way. So this year's a bit hard for it, but I definitely recommend going to conventions and just meeting people. We all love games, so play games with new people when you can, with industry people, and we all know each other. So um, if you do good work, if you're passionate, it'll get noticed, and then you have a better chance of finding a job. But uh, don't be afraid to start small, like part-time customer service. That's what did it for me.
Right. You've got to put in the work. It's like, like any other industry, and they're all different, obviously, but there's different, nooks and crannies, so to speak. But you do got to do good work. Clearly, you have done good work, and you've found a tremendous amount of success. And I am just really thrilled that you were able to join me today. If anyone does have a question, I would invite you, of course, to drop one in the comments. I see a few of you here, so if you have a question, please feel free to do it, and we'll certainly bring it up. I do want to just take a brief moment, just in case any questions come in here, to say, one, thank you to you. I also want to just give a heads up on 4/12. We're going to have a video. We've got a great group of people joining me for that video from another channel. So a collaboration that I'm excited about. And that channel actually focuses on playing games over Zoom. So the title is actually going to be our favorite games to play over Zoom. So we're going to each have 5 games that we talk about. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's on Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So certainly if you're interested, and then Marvel Monday is the Monday after that. Ryan Espin joins me, and we talk about some of the latest Marvel Champions news. That's a niche that some may be interested in. I love Marvel Champions, so for me, it's one I've been enjoying doing. At this time, I will say this: I don't see any questions, so this will be my last call. But Danny, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Is there any last piece or any other message, or even just any love or shout out you want to give to someone while you're here? I definitely appreciate, I will say, the detailed description of the game coming out on the 14th, because I think a lot of people are excited about it. And I think your description, you can feel the kind of enthusiasm that's there, and that's real, that's raw. And I know this industry appreciates that.
I feel like I talked way too much about Umbrevia, but that's a very thorough overview that I gave. So yeah, Umbrevia releases on Wednesday. It would be great if you could check it out. There's lots of videos and reviews of it now, by a lot of wonderful people. So you can find Pandasaurus online at Pandasaurus. We're the only ones. And if you talk to Pandasaurus on social media, you're also talking to me. So feel free to say hi.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely drop some links, including more information as I can about Pandasaurus, and when Umbrevia comes out, I can drop there's pre-order link that I can drop. So I'll put that into the channel after this as well. I want to thank all of those who tuned in live. If you're checking this out after the fact, please go to make sure to say hi to Danny over on the Pandasaurus handle. And with that, I want to thank you all for being a part of tonight's Creators Corner and coming aboard the Express. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to all of you very soon.